We are live on the web, BYUtvsports.com, here with Blaine Fowler, a man who knows a lot, and I mean a lot, about BYU athletics. It's great to have you here this morning.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Spencer.
All right, let's get right to it. The schedule is off the charts great this year for BYU football. You and I talked a little bit yesterday about some of the games that might present some interesting challenge for BYU. What game sticks out on the schedule for you right now?
You and I talked about this, and everybody's talking about that Notre Dame game, and that Notre Dame's ranked in most preseason top 15 polls. I've seen them 14th, 13th. But I think Texas is the most talented team that BYU is going to play this year. The number of returning starters, 18 returning starters. They have all of their skill guys back, both quarterbacks back. There's a ton of speed that they'll be bringing into Provo, and that concerns me. I think BYU over the years has matched up really well with teams that are physical and just try to knock you off the football and play, smash mouth football. That's Notre Dame. I think that's going to be Notre Dame again this next year, especially with Everett Golson, the quarterback, out. They'll be back with Tommy Rees. They'll be a ball control team, a great defensive team. BYU matches up great against that kind of team, and they'll play well at Notre Dame. Wisconsin, they've got to replace Monty Ball, the Doak Walker Award winner from last year, but they're still going to be a smash mouth football team. And so I think that Texas maybe presents the biggest challenge for BYU. Now, it's in Provo, but with the team speed that they'll bring in here and with the amount of talent that they have, it's a huge game. And I love that it's early in the season. If BYU can get a win at Virginia, which I believe they will, based on what Virginia's got coming back, and then they can go and beat a very talented Texas team who's also in a lot of top 20s, I think that launches BYU into the top 20 in the second week of the season.
That would be quite the start. Wins at Virginia and home to Texas. We invite you to chime in on Twitter with the hashtag BYU Media Day. If you have questions for Blaine or any of our guests for that matter, we like the social interaction. So please, hashtag BYU Media Day. Let us know your questions, and we'll get them on as soon as we can. You talked a little bit to me about road trips and fans enjoying watching BYU play on the road. What do you feel like is the best road trip experience on this year's schedule as far as just watching a football game goes?
So if we're talking about the football aspect only, because I've got maybe a different opinion of where a great place to go might be, and we can talk about that. But from a football experience, I know a lot of folks went to Notre Dame last year, and to me, it is the mecca of college football. I love Notre Dame, but it's late in the year, and for those that have already been there, I think Wisconsin is an unbelievable road trip experience. Camp Randall Stadium, I've done a couple of games there over the years, and their student section is nuts. They jump up and down. I keep waiting for the bleachers just to break because they're so energetic with what they're doing. They bounce up and down. The noise is phenomenal. It's a great crowd. It's a good Big Ten experience. And so if folks have not been to a big-time Big Ten game, I think Camp Randall has got a lot of history. I think that Wisconsin game, a lot of intrigue with Gary Anderson being the new head coach there, so some familiarity there. That'd be a don't miss road trip if you can, if you want to do that. If you've already been to Notre Dame, then why not try Wisconsin out? So we talked about yesterday. You and I were talking about what about places to go that are just great places to see.
Yeah.
And that opener against the University of Virginia in Charlottesville is an amazing place. Our son Kellen that played free safety here at BYU did his law degree at the University of Virginia. And I've also done some games there. The stadium is in a great setting, but the history of the university itself, this is Thomas Jefferson's university. Yeah. And he was the architect of all that went in there. The rotunda, the main building on campus, it's a national historical landmark. We're talking about Revolutionary War history back there. You go out to Monticello, out to his home. It is just a beautiful area, and I think for somebody that wants to do something outside of football, that UVA game for the opener would be a great road trip to go on.
Taking nothing away from Notre Dame, I mean, that stadium and that atmosphere is fantastic, but I agree. If you want a historical standpoint, Virginia is going to be a can't-miss experience. And going back to Wisconsin, the intrigue of Gary Anderson, who of course comes over from Utah State University, there's almost a rivalry that carries over, even though BYU hasn't been back to Madison in 1980. What a year to play the Badgers with him taking over.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be better. And Gary's familiar with what BYU does. BYU's familiar with what he does. You'll see a lot of the same things. This Wisconsin team, they've got some holes to fill, but you have to think they're going to be good. They're 3 times to the Rose Bowl. They're defending Rose Bowl champs. it's just a team that just seems to be good every year. And the formula for success there is not going to change because Gary's there. They're going to be really physical. They have the ability to recruit big-time offensive and defensive linemen. They dominate the line of scrimmage. They run the football at people, and it won't change because Gary's there. And he's a very good football coach. He gets the most out of his kids, and I think that he won't try to change things dramatically. We won't see them running the spread like they run up at Utah State with Chucky Keaton. He'll adapt what he does. He'll motivate, and they'll play great defense. I think Gary's a great defensive coach. This is going to be a big challenge, and Wisconsin's got horses. BYU's going to have a heck of a matchup in terms of great defense against great defense. I think that's going to be a grinded out game. It'll be a lot like, in my mind, like the Notre Dame game was last year on the road in South Bend. That type of a game. Physical, great defensive battle. And
low scoring.
Yeah, that's what I expect at Wisconsin.
You've already talked about Texas, their team speed, their athleticism, how talented they are, really from player 1 to 22 on that roster. Are there any other offenses that you think BYU's defense may struggle with in terms of speed and athleticism? Well,
I'll tell you, there's a game that scares me. And, you say, a game that scares you? Utah State and Logan scares me. and it's only because Chucky Keaton is playing quarterback again at Utah State and Logan. And that game makes me a little bit nervous just because I know how dynamic he is and how he can change a game with a big play here or there. And so he's coming back. He's confident. They've got 16 returning starters from a team. People forget that team finished 11-2 last year. They're ranked 16 in the country at the end of the year. They got a lot of starters back. Now there's coaching changes. I think Matt Wells is going to do a terrific job up there. A lot of ties to the state of Utah. So when they're not playing BYU, we got to root for them to do well. But people should not underestimate how good Utah State will be. And they always have good skill kids with great speed. They're going to spread you out. But the single player that maybe scares me the most on the schedule that BYU has to face is Chucky Keaton. Yeah. I think he's a great player, and he's so dynamic. 1 or 2 big plays in a game can make the difference. He's the guy that's capable of doing that.
Yeah, he can get around with his feet. He's a very shifty, hard-to-tackle guy.
Yeah, he really is.
Great insight there on Utah State. Now, you talked about if you win those first 2 games, it would be hard to put BYU outside the top 20 with those 2 big wins. Let's say that BYU has a fantastic season. They win 12 games, 11 games. What's it going to take for them to break into the current Bowl Championship Series, which will dissolve after this year, but what would it take for them to break into one of those big games?
Well, I mean, I look at, and I know that when you're just talking to Tom, he doesn't want to put numbers. I think that 8 wins this season would be a very, very good season. With the schedule, and it's not just the teams that they're playing this year, it's the road trips that they have to embark on. I mean, you combine all of that, new staff on offense. Yeah. For them to win 8 games with this schedule would be a very, very good season. Do I think they can do better than that? I think they can. But they're going to have to stay very healthy. And they're going to have to get continuity on that offensive line. I'm waiting to see. There's 8 new guys coming in. They do have some experience there coming back. They need to stay healthy, and they need to be really good on the offensive line. Then I think they need to just find some depth on the defensive line. If they can do those 2 things and stay healthy, they have a chance to be better than 8 games. If they get to 10 wins with this schedule, then I think they're an elite BYU team of all time. Then I think you have to compare them with this schedule with the 84 National Championship team or that 96 Cotton Bowl team. Or even, they had 3 Mountain West Conference, Las Vegas Bowl championship teams. 2 of them won the Mountain West Conference championship in the Las Vegas Bowl. Those John Beck teams that were so good, Max Hall when he was a sophomore. You would have to compare them with those teams with 10 wins. They get to 11 wins with this schedule. BYU hasn't had a season in the modern era, the BCS era, where I felt like they could have a loss and be in consideration for BCS bid. This year they could. The schedule is good enough that if they were to lose to, say, a Texas early and then go on a run and finish 11-1, or say they lose to a Wisconsin or Notre Dame late usually hurts you, but say those teams are in a BCS bowl, so they're nationally ranked in the top 5. BYU could be an 11-1 team this year and be in consideration for a BCS bowl depending on what everybody else is doing. Now, an undefeated season with this schedule, they're in.
Yeah,
they're in a BCS bowl. But I believe this is the first time we could say, hey, if BYU could get to 11-1 with this schedule, they would be in consideration for a BCS bowl.
And as a fan, you want to always believe that they have that shot, that opportunity. But we appreciate the insight and the realistic outlook given this schedule. I mean, it's going to be.
Dave McCann was getting on me. He was like, "You're negative." I go, "No, I'm not negative. I'm just looking at who they play and where they play them and how the schedule shapes up." And there's some teams on there that people think are easy wins. I'm telling you, Middle Tennessee has speed all over the field. This was a team that won 8 games last year. they are a talented team. And so there's not a lot of easy games. Okay, we can look at Idaho State this year and say, now BYU should be able to line up, knock them off the football, and do whatever they want. Outside of that game this season, there's not another game on the schedule where you just go, this is just, they can play poorly and win. That's just not the case. So realistic, 8 games is good. 10 games is outstanding.
Yeah.
11 games, we're talking one of the best teams in BYU history. 12 games, then you have to put them, you put them in a BCS bowl and you put them on a pedestal all by themselves with 12.
Yeah, now let's talk a little bit about the offense. Taysom Hill coming back, obviously a lot of people are concerned about his health and his knee. What do you think he's going to be able to do in his sophomore campaign?
I think the fact that he started a couple games helps a lot. And I think that Robert and I and his staff are going to put him in positions for him to be successful, give him easy reads early on, build his confidence. I think they're going to put a little bit of a rein on him. We see him running a lot in the games they played in last year. There are going to be fewer designed runs for him. And when they are designed runs, they're going to make sure that he understands this is what we expect to do, and then you've got to get down and you've got to keep healthy, because I think the key for Taysom Hill to get into the groove and to be as good as they think that he can be, he's got to stay healthy and he's got to get reps under his belt. But we also know that in today's college football, with defenders as fast and physical as they are, the Ziggy Ansah kinds of guys that run ridiculous speeds at 270 pounds, that there's a chance your quarterback's going to get hurt. What makes me most excited about this team is, for the first time in a long time, they've got really, really good depth. And I think Ammon Olsen would be very capable of leading this team and executing the offense. So with 2 good quarterbacks coming in, I think production at that quarterback position is going to improve if they can keep them healthy. I think they would have been fine last year, but Riley just couldn't stay healthy. Health and depth, important at that position. And then, it all comes down to, can they put an offensive line together that can keep that guy healthy? I mean, I love the skill set of both of these quarterbacks. I think Taysom Hill, the sky is the limit for him. Skill set is great, but you got to protect him and you've got to give him time. So, to me, the biggest question is, how's the offensive line going to be? If they're great, Taysom Hill's going to have a great season.
Yeah, you have to think that the offensive line will improve with Robert and I coming back. That's his specialty. And with him as an offensive coordinator, what do you see happening in terms of the go fast, go hard mentality? What's going to be different than last year's offense that people will notice right away?
Well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on defenses. And the defenses that they're playing are going to have to defend a lot more plays over the course of the game. They'll come at you relentlessly. They make it difficult for you to substitute. I noticed that Saban down in Alabama was complaining about these fast break offenses, because he can get the big horses and he can rotate people in. He's got more depth than anybody. It's a disadvantage to teams like Alabama when a team forces you to keep the same guys out on the field and match up your ones against their ones. That really helps BYU. You put pressure on those defenses, you wear them down, and those poor defensive linemen that are playing against you, they're coming off the ball hard thinking they're going to sack the quarterback. The quarterback's catching it, getting rid of the football, they're getting back up to the line of scrimmage. You wear down defensive lines, and I've noticed in teams that run this offense, the rushing numbers really improve as the game goes on. So look in this offense for guys like Jamal Williams and Mike Alisa and Adam Hine to have more of an impact in the 3rd and 4th quarter of games as they wear these defenses down. They've been out there for a lot of plays, and they haven't been able to get a hand on the quarterback. That gets really frustrating for a defense.
I don't want to say BYU's offense is going to look like Oregon, but obviously that's a team that kind of comes to mind when you're talking about that hyper fast, go hard system. Oregon kind of operates on a speed kills basis. BYU can still bring it to you, play a little smash mouth football. But would you say that that's, if you wanted to compare it to a team, that's maybe the one to look to, Oregon?
That's the model of what you want to do. Now, they've got unbelievable team speed. I was on the sideline for the Oregon-Arizona State game this last fall, night game down in Tempe. And that's the first time in a couple of years I've seen Oregon in person. And I wasn't up in the booth, I was down on the sideline for that game. I was taken back by the speed. I mean, I couldn't. It looked like an NFL team out there. And Arizona State has got good team speed, and Oregon made them look slow. The thing that I would hope BYU would integrate into what they do, that they would take from Oregon, is the thing I noticed the most was the confidence that they play with. Now, in this game that I was at down there, Arizona State, Oregon got the opening kickoff. They fumbled on the first play from scrimmage, and Arizona State ran it for a touchdown. I was on the Oregon sideline. I was really interested to see the psyche of the Oregon players, and I was the mentality was, oh, whatever. Like we're gonna roll up 55 on these guys, so who cares? So we spotted them 7.
What's
big
a
deal.
touchdown?
They get the next kickoff. It's a touchback. They get it at the 20. 2 plays later, they score. They stop him, and there's 3 and out. They get the next one. 2 plays later, they score. It was like 44-7 by halftime.
Yeah.
And so if BYU can adopt anything from Oregon that would really, really have an impact, it would be to play with that kind of swagger and confidence. I mean, when you're coming at people like they're going to with this team speed, if you can play with a bit of a swagger, then you don't hesitate. You play full speed on every play. That has big-time impact. They could shoot for that. If they can play like Oregon, oh boy, they're going to be good on offense.
I don't think anybody will complain about 50 points a game. I remember that Arizona State game, as a matter of fact. I was actually flying into South Bend to watch BYU play. It was a Thursday night.
Yes.
And I had to look at my phone a few times because, like you said, it was 44-7, and I was like, that can't be right.
It was like a video game.
That can't be right.
And the people in the stadium in Tempe, they got a little excited. Arizona goes up. They're thinking, hey, we got a shot. But over on the Oregon sideline, it was like, these guys have no shot. And I love that confidence. And BYU's played with that kind of confidence on the defensive side of the ball the last couple of years. That needs to carry over to the offense. Confidence is such a big part of success in this game because sometimes you're evenly matched out there. So you've got to out-scheme the teams you're playing, but the team that plays with more confidence makes more big plays, and that's important for BYU.
All right, to close up, I learned something about Blaine yesterday,
Oh, no.
and this is trivia, so write this down because I'm sure this will come up. I got a kick out of this. You are the first quarterback to ever complete a pass in a college football game broadcast on ESPN.
That's right.
It goes back to Pittsburgh through a halfback pass, and you completed the first pass downfield to Glenn Kozlowski?
Yeah, the first play that ESPN ever did, the first game that they ever did on a national basis, they did the Pittsburgh BYU game, our opener in 1984. So to kind of surprise them a little bit, we opened the game. We got the ball first. We opened the game with a halfback pass. And Glenn Kozlowski made an unbelievable catch. It wasn't a great throw, and I got smacked by Chris Dolan on the play. But that's a very obscure trivia, man. That's good.
That's very. Yeah, I was taking notes.
The first complete ever on ESPN.
Very cool. Blaine Fowler, thanks so much for your time.
Good to see you. Hey, welcome to the team. We're excited to have you this year.
Very excited.